So
Nice.
it's hard when you're a good looking dude. That's just what happens, it just looks good. So and you got that voice that everybody's jealous of on earth.
Oh wow, podcast voice.
So that's it, man. Okay, so you're telling me you just got booked on a number of different stages, one of them being the Penguin Company. How'd you do that? How'd you go about it? I mean, I know how cool you are, man. I know your systems are awesome for podcasting, which is why we're going to reveal to the world some of the things that you're up to. But how did you get that speaking engagement?
Well, that one there, it actually came from a strategy call. It actually all came from, if I'm going to put it in one sentence, it came from just giving value. So on my LinkedIn, something I like to do quite a lot is give out strategy calls to people who follow me. So I just put out my calendar and say there's 3 slots available. If you'd like to book a strategy call for your podcast or for your brand, then feel free to book one. And usually it's podcast related. And then someone actually booked one, or someone put me in contact with somebody who booked it. And that person happened to be the ex-head of marketing for Formula One, as in the cars. Like,
Wow.
when that person kind of said they were interested, I said, absolutely, let's have a chat. Let's have a full-on conversation. Let's do it. So we jumped on the phone and we had a really, really nice conversation. I told them all about what I was doing and they said everything that they're doing. And I kind of gave them advice on how to actually launch their podcast, because they wanted to do a podcast around bereavement, which is completely different from like the industry I thought that they would want to be going into. But they're very, very skilled in that area. And I just kind of gave them a game plan on how to go forwards with that. And they also happen to be on the board for this community, or this like not-for-profit organization called People Like Us, which basically highlighted people in the advertising and marketing industries who have done really, really good campaigns, or have, just been a part of really, really big campaigns and great campaigns that have caused impact or created some sort of a change. And she said that I would be perfect for that because of the podcast that I used to run called Purpose Led, which reached like top 5% most shared podcast in the personal development sector. And we like touched millions of people online through social media. We released I think just over 100 episodes when we were running it. That's probably one of the biggest things that have changed recently, Jackson, because we actually stopped that podcast because of everything else that's going on. We've actually took a step back from that. But she said, you would be perfect for this next talk that we have, and it's in collaboration with Penguin. It's at their offices. And I said, let's do it. So I spoke to them. They said, yeah, we'd love to have you. And I said, amazing, I'd love to be there. And then I spoke on stage and the people really loved it. And honestly, Jackson, I haven't said this to many people, but that was probably the moment after I got off stage, after speaking to like 150 people in their office. That was probably the moment that I decided I was going to take public speaking seriously, because I'd done it at my events beforehand. Like, I'd spoken to hundreds of people before, but this time was different because it was in a complete different environment. Like, just before that, I'd spoken at Deloitte, but it was online. I spoke with a good friend of mine who I ran the podcast with, to about 180 people, and we spoke about purpose, but it was online. And then this time I did it in person. So I said, okay, not only can I do this to my audience, like public speaking, I could do this to my audience, as in the podcast audience, but I can also do this to a corporate like Deloitte online. And I can also do this at a publishing company like Penguin in person to 150 people, and everyone's smiling and saying how much they loved it afterwards. There must be something going on here with speaking. So that was the moment that I said that I'm going to take speaking seriously. But that's a roundabout way of saying I just gave value and it kind of came to me.
That's the roundabout, though, that people need to hear, right? There's so many little milestones that if somebody just takes a notebook out and starts checking through that list, right, they're going to get an extensive list of seeing how much you give to the world, right? How much you show up for people and how much people value you because you show up. And while that may be daunting for somebody who thinks, especially the stage, who's thinking like, oh, I'll just get on stages and it'll just happen and I'll just win. Good luck. There's a lot of value that needs to be prepared and provided. And that's also what can sound like, oh my gosh, I have to do all this. That's the opportunity, right? And when you seize it as an opportunity, you can enjoy that process as well. Dude, that was just a refreshing amount of goodness that you shared. One thing that strikes me too, you talked about the size of these audience. You're not talking about millions. You're not talking about thousands. You're not talking about 150 people from all different companies that are all in your perfect niche and ideal individual that's going to buy from you tomorrow. You're just talking about showing up and providing
Mm.
the value to those that you were in front of.
Yeah.
And I hope more people, again, gather that reality. The other thing I want to hit on that I don't think many people are going to gather and capture from your story, because it's just not well known right now, is podcasts are a modern form of business.
Hmm.
Okay, I get it. Everybody's like, oh, duh. But what they're not realizing is you have an asset that you've pretty much kind of shut down. You put on pause. But if I were to put a storage unit on pause for a year, there'd be a certain amount of wear and tear associated
Hmm.
with and degradation that would take place for that brand. It would deteriorate a little bit. You'd have things that have to be fixed and have to be polished, or might develop. Your podcast has none of those problems. If you ever wanted to sell said asset or podcast, and somebody's out there is like, man, I want to start my own podcast, where do I even get started? Right? The acquisitions phase of podcasts, that tidal wave is a tiny ripple right now, and will
Yeah.
eventually become this tsunami opportunity of, man, these entities are going to get exchanged for cash value, very much like traditional businesses have been. I don't want to create a money grab, and create an
Mm.
environment. It's a byproduct of value being, achieved. Is, wow, there's a gold rush now towards this. But it is really cool that you're one of the pioneers in that space who's created something of that valuable an asset. And I hope you don't just delete it. I hope that someday somebody gets to carry that torch forward, because that's, to me, what it's about, right? Is even if it's not
Yeah.
you, somebody else coming in and being able to carry that torch forward and continue to help the world the way that you've done so, that would be brilliant. Have you already looked into and thought about that?
In terms of selling on the podcast, not really.
Mm,
Not really. We just, the reason that we even took a step back is just because of how much was going on. Like with these
right.
speaking engagements that are popping up, and my friend that I run it with as well, he actually works full time and he has his own business. So doing this
Mm,
on top of doing those other
all of
two
that.
things, it's a lot. It's a
Yes, it
lot,
is.
Jackson.
So
So,
I got a
and even
question
with,
for you. If the right
oh, go for
person
it.
came in, right? Somebody's listening to
Uh-huh.
us right now and they're like, I'm the right
Yeah.
person. I want to be that guy or gal, right? I want to take that torch. And they were to approach you about that. Would you entertain the conversation, or would you be like, no, I don't know. What would you be looking for if somebody wanted to come in and represent it?
I would be looking for a very, very, very good case as to why they should carry the torch. Because, Jackson, this has taken us 3 years to build. It's taken us 3 years to build. The audience knows, likes, and trusts us to another level, to the point where they literally, they'll come up to me in public and say thank you so much for what you're doing, and say it online as well.
Mm,
That I can't just hand it to anyone. Me and my friend, we
right.
can't just hand it to anyone. So it's a thing where we have to be careful of, who we're passing this to, if we were to pass this to somebody. So they would have to give us a very, very good case, as to why they should be the person to bring this forwards. And when I say taking a step back, we might come back, and
Yeah.
we may very well come back next year, when my friend has, kind of moved out of his job, if that's what he chooses to do. I know he wishes to do that, but if that's what he actually ends up doing, moves out of his job, then he just goes
Yep.
full time with his business and has things on automation similar to how I have it, and will continue to have it going forwards, God willing. Then that is when we can look to actually bring the podcast back and bring the events back too, because we'll still be operating the business as purpose led. That's what the podcast is called.
Of course.
So we go into corporates to speak and such, just like how we did at Deloitte, and then we'll probably do it a couple others as well sometime soon. But we'll bring back that podcast and that event aspect, because even our last event, Jackson, we ran like maybe eight to 10 events. And our last event, people were saying, this is my first event that I've been to out of your events, and it's the best event I've ever been to in my life. And I said, why are you telling me this now? Like, we're just about to like actually pull back from this. But it's something that I feel like we're gonna have to do at some point as well. Maybe we'll bring someone else into it.
Have
But
the opportunity to, right?
yeah.
But I'm gonna go back. There's a dynasty called the Los
Mhm.
Angeles Lakers. And they
Okay.
had a man named
I know
Kobe
about them.
Bryant, and they had a man named
Yes.
Shaquille O'Neal, and they had to make
Yes.
space, or had the opportunity to make space, for a Pau Gasol coming in.
Mm.
And they also happened to bring this guy in at one point, LeBron James. And at the
Mm.
Spurs, we had Tim Duncan and Ginobili, and we had Parker. And here comes Kawhi Leonard on the trade block, not the trade block, on the draft block, right? And we end up getting him and win another championship, right? And so the legacy continued. There's an opportunity there. So you just never know how the
True.
podcast world can evolve like that. But when we, as the founders, and then again, the LeBron James of the world, have to know they can fill those shoes. right?
Yeah.
The Kawhi Leonards have to be willing and ready, and they have to show that. So I see an awesome opportunity there. I hope more people in the podcast sphere start to recognize the opportunities at hand here, and that these entities are far more valuable than they're given credit for in the business
Yeah.
market. But it's because of the amount of power, the amount of focus, the amount of goodwill that's able to be done with the power of the voice. Now, the old saying was the pen is mightier than the sword. Right.
Yes.
Well, I think the voice is mightier than the pen. They just didn't have the
Mm,
technology uh, to utilize it the same way that the pen could be utilized back in the day.
I
So
like that.
let's use our powers wisely. Before we dive into a little bit of a break, what are 3 resources that you recommend, Jonathan, for
Ooh.
leaders, visionaries, podcast people out there? They're all kind of the same. People who are going after it in life. What are 3 resources we should be paying attention to that have helped you?
That have helped me. Specific resources or platforms?
Yeah, I mean, you can do either one. So it can be books, movies, or platforms. Those secrets that, man, if we overlook, like we could have learned it from you. Uh,
I'd say honestly YouTube. YouTube
yeah,
University is what I call it, because you can learn anything on there, from how to fix a car, how to make a car, to how to fix a light bulb, how to make a light bulb, what camera to buy. You can learn anything from YouTube, just as long as you look at the right channels as well. Another
yes,
thing
sir.
is new platforms that are popping up and taking advantage of them. So, for example, when Clubhouse popped up, you were able to get in rooms with like Gary Vee and Grant Cardone and just talk to them, because it
Mhm.
was it was undervalued attention, I would even say,
Yes.
because people were on these apps talking about whatever they were talking about, but there was these people who were also using these apps that you could get into contact with and actually start something from. Like, that's where we started. We used Clubhouse to actually start our podcast. That's where we got our
Woo!
kickstart. Yeah,
That's
that's where we
cool
got our
because
kickstart.
Clubhouse has, they made a change. They let go of 100 employees, right, and had to
Wow.
refigure out how they're doing things, but it's
Mm,
still a platform that's relevant and important. And I would say OWWLL owl.com, also what Jason's building over there, phenomenal, same type of resource. It doesn't have to be the Facebook of the world in order to be
yeah.
valuable. Right. Clubhouse made massive changes,
Mm,
waves in the industry that required all the other social media platforms to look at it and step up and say, well, we got to do something about this, in order to compete with Clubhouse. So fantastic resource. What's the third one?
absolutely. And I'll say another resource. Hmm. Another resource, podcasts.
There you go.
Well, of course, I'm biased. Of course, I'm
Of
biased. I'm
course
not
we're
gonna lie.
biased, but we
I'm
should be.
definitely biased, but I love podcasts. Like, it just makes sense, because if you're doing something, you can listen to a podcast. You can also watch a podcast, and there are podcasts on so many different things as well. And I find there's always the podcasts which are super, like, not many people know about, but they're super niched, that help me so much. And all it takes is a little bit of a Spotify search, or looking on YouTube to find the podcast that you like, and then you'll be able to find something with a whole lot of information, and you can just really just absorb that information quickly through the podcast format. I love it.
I love that. That's awesome. And for those of you, the little bonus kicker on that, when you find the podcast and the leaders, don't get me wrong, I love the book, right? The books and the podcasts themselves, but it is the person who's creating it that I
Yeah.
truly want to get close to, right? And
Mm,
be able to utilize their knowledge and influence. So whenever I'm looking for something for marketing, for instance, John Lee Dumas, John Loomer, digital marketer, social media examiner, right? I'll go to Jonathan Reid as a friend too, because I have you as a friend now. So I can do that. And those individuals who are posting, or Pat Flynn, right? Their
mm,
podcasts too are broken down so well that if you look up a specific subject, they've also got all the resources listed out
yeah.
too. So you can quickly grab the resources. I don't need to listen to the full episodes anymore and feel like, oh my gosh, I have to listen to all their episodes in a day
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
run my business and also be there for my 4 children too. Like there's
Yep.
only so many hours. So finding the source, of the water well and sticking close to it and learning uh, how to streamline as much of that goodness into your life as possible. I love the resources that you give. Same is true with YouTube University. Waste a lot of time on
Yes.
YouTube, but if you're using it as a university, if you're using it with the intent of driving your life forward, it can do amazing things for your life. So thank you for
Absolutely.
standing
Oh,
by
and
those guns.
and
There are older ears who don't
definitely
listen to that. Go ahead.
another thing as well, Jake Jackson, as well, on university and listening to particular people when it comes to podcasts too, is you literally use YouTube like a university. So in university, you don't have 50 lecturers, you don't have 100 lecturers. No, you have a couple of lecturers that you
Mhm.
listen to for individual things. So for YouTube, have the same like take
Discipline.
have the same discipline exactly. So listen to maybe 4 people, and what I do is I use this like an extension. I can't remember what the extension is called. I can send it to you afterwards when I find it. But
Definitely.
just block out everything else on YouTube. Follow a couple of people
Mm,
that you know are going to give you the stuff you need to get. Because one thing that we fall into a lot, and we could speak about this if you'd like to, but it's overconsumption. And I feel like
yep.
as humans, we are just always consuming something, whether it be Netflix, whether it be YouTube, whether it be songs, whether it be podcasts, and that is just becoming noise for us. And because
Right.
us as business owners, we know that noise isn't that great. We want clarity. We want
Correct.
clarity so that we can drive the business forwards. That's why we're so big on systems, so we can drive the business forwards clearly and with clarity. That's exactly what we want. And it's the same thing with YouTube University, because I believe how you do something is how you do everything. So it's the same thing there, making sure that you tune into a couple of people that you know are going to give you the right things.
Absolutely. Guys, we're going to hit to a little break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Jonathan Reid's vision, re-identify his brand. I highly recommend looking that up. You will see what I've seen. He is one of the kings of clarity on earth. So if you're looking for clarity for your business, your brand, your podcast, definitely stay tuned. We'll be right back and talk about moving your vision for your podcast forward and helping you with your own business growth. All right. Welcome in to Vision Pros Live with Jackson Callum. I'm your show host. We will be doing interviews for visionary entrepreneurs and guest leaders who are building fantastic visions out there. Woohoo! What's up, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Vision Pros Live. I'm your show host, Jackson Callum, founder and CEO of First Class Business. And I am so stoked today to have Jonathan Reid on stage from Re-Identify. Go check it out, Re-Identify. While we talk, we're talking about an absolute genius when it comes to show strategy and podcasts and driving more downloads. To what end? Well, to grow the impact that your show has on the amount of people who can benefit from it, which ultimately creates a virtuous cycle of influence that allows you to move your brand forward, influence more people, help more people, do more good in the world. And that's what it's really all about. So Jonathan's going to teach us all about that. Of course, the byproduct of that as well, that you business folks are looking at is how to make money? How do I turn revenues based on these subjects? Well, when you follow these principles of systems and clarity, like Jonathan and I are going to be talking about, that's what ultimately leads to having the type of garden or farm, if you will, analogy wise, that can produce the fruits that you want. It's all about putting in the work, putting in the systems that can help you produce things at scale. So we're gonna have some fun with that. Before I bring Jonathan on board, though, we always want to highlight some other aspects, some other resources that can be helpful to you. Shining star example of fantastic podcast is the Hard to Kill podcast with Dave Morrow. His mission, his vision is one that allows him to scale. So I don't want to say effortlessly, but the efforts he does put in are, I want to say, sanctified by the fact that he has an amazing mission. He's on a mission to help 100,000 veterans lose 2 million pounds collectively, which has led him to be a veteran podcast award winner, Top Army Podcast 2022. He's done some amazing things in his life too, of course, to help individuals. But those veterans, most of them lose sight. I shouldn't say most of them. A lot of veterans, though, they come home, they start to gain weight. Maybe they get into alcohol a little bit, and they lose sight of their value of what they've done on a daily basis. And so when they start to not look good, they start to not feel good, and then it becomes a little bit harder to be motivated to go and do good. So he's reversing that cycle. He's helping veterans lose the weight, keep their identity intact, look good so they can feel good, and then go about doing good. And I love the man that he is. He's been an awesome leader with us over the last several months. So if you're looking to get into a fitness program, I highly recommend checking out what Dave's up to and what his Veterans Fit AF community looks like as well. Moving into an entity built by Peyton Childers, Magix Productions. Peyton, excuse me, we had an event called First Class Networking. And at that event, Peyton came out to set up his system so that we could stream that event live on YouTube. You can go check that out. It was one of his first projects in this space. Now, Peyton's got a huge background when it comes to production. He was on the production crew for the championship Texas Rangers. He was also on the championship crew for the Sam Houston University when they won the football championship. So he's got this amazing background of putting together great production while also understanding dynamic camera angles and creating content that's amazing. And he was the first to show up at my event. He was the last to leave from the event. He even left after I did. Granted, he lives in Dallas and I live in San Antonio, so I had quite a drive. But nonetheless, the type of hospitality that I saw from this 25-year-old young man, combined with the quality that he was able to put out there, was like, wow, anybody that needs an AV guy or somebody to help them produce events or produce a podcast, I highly recommend checking out what Peyton's up to. Go support him on his way. And he's got a new podcast that's coming out as well called To My Past Self, where he's going to be interviewing leaders about the advice they would give to their past selves. Super awesome. Then we got the Water Project. I don't have my water bottle next to me, but the Water Project is something that I refuse to forget about because I've never been thirsty in my life. But there are millions of people out there who do not have access to clean drinking water, and their kids have to leave school for water, which interrupts their education. The parents have to leave work in order to go get water, which interrupts their ability to provide. And we are so privileged and lucky for those of us who don't have to worry about that. That I was really happy when I came across this project and saw that they are transparently making such a profound impact in the world. It's easy for us to also showcase. Now, here's what's cool. When you choose a community that you're going to give back to and you donate, whether it's $5 or $10, they're going to include you on the newsletter for that community project's development. You get to see it come to fruition, whether it's a borehole well or a sand dam. You get to see how many people's lives you're affecting. And just imagine, I mean, if the kids are celebrating water, like you see on the screen here, like my kids celebrate Christmas Day, just imagine the impact that has over their lives over the years to come. It's a fantastic way to give back and help. Now, if you have another cause that you want to see us support and give back to, please just drop the link in the comments. We love learning about new causes, new ways we can help. There's 8 billion people in this world who need help. So the more we can do to bring about the good, help others, give back, it's really up to all of us coming together. You never know how far the ripple effect will go for spreading the word about something good that can be done. So please join us on that effort. And without further ado, Jonathan Reid, welcome to Vision Pros Live, man.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Jackson.
Absolutely. We're going to dive right in. Before we talk about downloads and strategies, Jonathan, this can go outside the realm of podcasting as well if you want to, or you can keep it centered. What's your vision for the people that you serve?
Well, Jackson, the vision for the people that I serve, and it leads to my overall mission, which is basically helping people to reach their potential that they've been put on this earth to fulfill. That's essentially what I do. So whether that's for my clients, whether that's for the audience members, whether that's for my friends, whether that's just for people that I meet in public or even in private, is to help them reach the potential that they have been given, right? And to fulfill the potential that they've been given. That's my vision and mission.
That's cool. That's beautiful. I'm not even take you further down that. That is so well defined and just so awesome because I just align with it. You know, I've got a bias there. I love to do the same thing. There's nothing more fulfilling in life than seeing somebody's eyes light up, right? And their heart take off. You can hear it in their voice, see in their attitude, you can feel it in their cadence. There's just a new dynamic that comes when you meet people with that type of energy and that type of desire. So that's super cool. I gotta ask you, what is your vision for you? Let's dive into the depths of that a little bit.
The vision for me, I have a short-term vision and I have a long-term vision.
Yeah.
So the short-term vision is essentially me traveling a lot more. I just came back from Mexico. I think I might have told you this a couple of weeks ago. No, a couple of months ago, actually. It was in April. Time flies. A couple of months ago now. Really enjoyed that. I was there for a couple of weeks. I loved it. And now the vision in the near future is to actually be going traveling more and to be running my business whilst I'm traveling and impacting lives whilst I'm traveling around the world, whether that be back to Mexico, in Spain, places like Thailand, Bali, Dubai, South Africa, just to try out these different places. And I like heat. Currently, I'm in London, and the London, however, it can't make up its mind. So it doesn't know whether it's summer, whether it's winter, whether it's it doesn't know. So I want to go somewhere where it knows what time of the year it is. But I still love London, though. I still love London. But yeah, that's the short-term vision, and the long-term vision, of course.
I got to invite you before you do the long-term vision. I got to invite you. I've not done this for anybody yet, but when we go to Colombia to see our team in Colombia and pull our people together, you're invited, Jonathan. We'd love to have you there.
I appreciate it.
Oh, it'd be awesome. They got their own podcast in Spanish. What's up?
When are you going to Colombia?
We don't have the plan, so it's going to be within probably let's hope for Q4, but more
Mhm.
realistically, probably Q1 or Q2.
Okay.
So we can certainly start planning ahead on that. But they got their own podcast in Spanish that they run to help
Nice.
Latinos understand the opportunities that exist in the online world, helping drive free training for them to get placed as virtual assistants by other companies. So anyway, let's put that on the bucket list.
Absolutely. And do you give me more information when the time comes as well?
Yeah,
It'd be amazing to join you out there.
absolutely. Okay, now you
Absolutely.
get the long-term vision. I get this long-term vision
Yeah,
now. I know I
the
just put your mind
long-term
like, "What?
vision.
You just told me to go to a third world country?" Yep, yep,
I
absolutely,
love
man. It's
I love
great
me a little
weather.
bit Colombia. Yeah, definitely. And the food as well. That's what I would
Oh my
look forward
gosh.
to.
Food, the
But
people.
and the people, yes. Oh my gosh, I've heard so much about them. But yeah, so for me, the long-term vision is helping people fulfill their potential on a much larger scale. So whether that be through, and this is the thing with a vision, you don't always know what you're going to like exactly how you're going to get there, but you know what you want to end up as, or you know what the vision will ultimately be. So as I said, helping people to fulfill their potential on a much larger scale, whether that be through my business, when my business expands and such, whether it be through the podcast that I currently run, as in the Thought Leaders Handbook, whether that be through the old podcast, if we choose to step back into it, called Purpose Led. So, and the beautiful thing about it as well, Jackson, is that I can do this, I can fulfill this vision through all three of those things. And I can fulfill it also through public speaking, which is something, as I told you, I'm taking a lot more seriously too.
Yep.
So that is what I love most about the vision. Like, I don't know exactly what steps I need to take to get there, but I know where I'm going to end up, and all paths lead there.
Absolutely. Well, and see, that's the brilliance. Those of you listening in, that's the brilliance of alignment of your life,
Mm,
right? And just having that belief. Now, it can be easy to shut down such a dream and be like, "Oh, it's too woo woo." You know, you can't make money doing these things. You know, or "Oh, you know, it's don't you have to get a job and work hard, etc." Too. I mean, thank you, Tim Ferriss, for the 4-hour work week and paving the way for the new rich. You know, giving people permission to go and do with their life what they wanted to do with it. I'll also add on, there's a lot of people in the coaching world right now that are getting
mm,
fed up with how many new coaches there are, especially the old guard of coaches, right? And they're like, "Oh, we don't need any more coaches." How many more math teachers do we need in the world?
mm,
Excuse me. We got 8 billion people out there, right, who
yeah.
need better and more teachers. So how many more people do we need helping people align with purpose? Why don't we just take a poll and see how many people in the world are 100% aligned with their purpose? And why don't we look at the attitudes of those individuals too and see, are they truly aligned with it? Do they really exude somebody who's loving life, getting after it, excited, not scared of their sacrifices or their
Yeah.
challenges they have? Like, it's not hard to walk down your road and knock on a few doors and see that people are fairly empty right now. And they're
Mm,
not ready to reciprocate. They're not ready to engage with people at a higher level. So I absolutely love what you're up to. I love that you've been able to align what you're doing in the world with that same mission. And I hope other visionaries listening in sees that opportunity. So, you know what, if he's doing it and Jackson's working on that too, I
mm.
I can do this. You know, I can step into this and move forward. So any thoughts on that before we dive into your worst leadership experience ever?
Definitely. Well, first and foremost, I believe when it comes to making money or for providing value, I honestly believe that the amount of money that you make and the amount of wealth that you accumulate is directly proportionate to the amount of value that you provide. So if I'm
Mm,
here giving value to people in the way of helping them to fulfill their potential in life, I think I'll be paid in proportion to that. And I would
mhm.
like to think that I'll be paid in proportion to that. It just depends on how you do it. So I could do it through coaching. I could do this through speaking on large stages. I could do this in person. I could do this speaking and going into places of the less fortunate and making money through my business. It can still work. But the
Yeah,
fact of the matter is that you get paid in proportion to the value that you provide. And I aim to be providing a lot of value, just like you are, Jackson. And just
yeah,
like I currently am aiming to do, right? And
yeah.
also in terms of that that abundance mindset that you kind of alluded to when you were speaking
Mhm.
about, do we need more maths teachers? Of course. And this is the thing with, like, if you come from a scarcity mindset of, oh, we don't need any more coaches, and it's not even necessarily a scarcity mindset. I made a video about this, actually a podcast about this recently, which I'll be releasing next week or the week after on the Thought Leaders Handbook. And it's about podcasting being saturated. I hear all the time that podcasting is saturated. Podcasting is not saturated. That's like
No.
saying book writing is
Caution.
saturated. And if
Right.
like how is it, book writing can't be saturated? Because if book writing was saturated, and if the great people that of the great authors that have written books thought that book writing was saturated, we never would have had Atomic Habits, we never would have had
Right.
Rich Dad Poor Dad, we never would have had other great amazing books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Sorry, I just all I know is personal
Oh, you're
development books
good.
right now.
You're good. Hitting it. Exactly.
But what's another one? I was actually reading 10x is better than 2x as well. That's a great book too.
Yes.
But we wouldn't have these books if the authors thought that the market was saturated. And it's the same
Correct.
thing about podcasting, and it's the same thing about adding value and coaching people. Because one thing I believe is a thing called vitamin U. That's the one thing that separates other people from you. That is the one thing that this world, the one vitamin that this world is deficient in, is vitamin U. The thing that you have to bring to the world, what separates you from other people. Because somebody coaching on purpose, they're not you. Someone else coaching on purpose, they're not you. Or coaching on whatever it is that you know, they are not you. And there are people that you are called to serve, meaning that there are people out there waiting for you to speak to them. But because you think that the market is saturated, because you think that there's too many people doing it, you'll never step foot in it in the first place.
Yes.
But yeah, that's all I have to say on that, Jackson.
Dude, I love that. I'm going to debate one thing with you. And we can agree to disagree and still be friends. Believe that or not, those of you who watch CNN and Fox, you can actually have a difference of opinion and still be friends. So
Absolutely.
the one thing that I would caution you visionaries on that Jonathan said that I fundamentally disagree with, but I'm always open to learning more about is I don't believe that the money we receive is a reflection of where we're at. And the reason why is because of my Christian background and my dedication to reality to the story of Job, right? Who apparently had done everything he was supposed to, but because in the Christian faith, we live by faith, right? We're supposed to go through these trials. He lost everything, even though he was doing everything right. And his friends and family turned on him, said he was a problem, and he must have done something wrong. But in reality, he wasn't supposed to follow God because of the wealth that he achieved. It was supposed to be just because that's how faith works. And so I think that there's a lot of people out there listening who you may be getting the short end of the stick financially, so to speak. But if you're staying true to your virtues, you're staying true to your values, you're staying true to who you're supposed to be. Don't give up on that. Don't shift away from that in order to quench the thirst, and satisfy the prophets. I've been faced with that in my past as well. Where it's like, man, I could do this. I could just turn the volume up on the urgency of my offers, for instance. I have a ton of people buy like that, but I know in my heart how unethical that would be for me to do in my scenario and what I'm doing. So I would like to, I'll give you the chance to also speak on that though, Jonathan. I'm not trying to lay a hard truth and say your opinion is not valid, but what would you counter with, or what other wisdom can you bring to the table related to that subject before we move on?
I appreciate that, Jackson. And I 100% appreciate your point as well, because I come from the same background, the Christian background too. And as far as I believe as well, in the story of Job, towards the end of it, doesn't he get everything back? Well,
10x.
not exactly everything back, but
10x.
then
He exercises the patience. He loses it all. His wife says, why don't you just curse God and die? And he's like, God giveth and God taketh away. Right. And he accepted the reality that his actions weren't what controlled the outcome. And then God floods his life with all of the values. And so I don't think that Job could be irresponsible and get what he wanted. I think we do have to try to measure. We do have to try to show up. We do have to try to use our brains and hearts. But at the end of the day, if a tornado wipes your farm out, you don't get to control the external factors. But just as fast as that tornado wiped the farm out, God can do something else to bring in an entire set of blessings for your life. So there's a balance to be had in the story. And I'm no historian. I am certainly not a Bible scholar, and I'm certainly not a perfect Christian by any means. I'm a sinner and a saint for sure. But so yes, I do hope that those of you going through a rough time, though, you hear that and you say, you know what, I'm going to stick true to my principles. And at the end of the day, my personal belief is God's going to bless me with what is most valuable to me for my needs, and that may not
Mm.
be the wealth when I expect it or when I think it's coming for me.
Agreed. Agreed. And I think the main thing to remember is that faith point that you said, like remaining faithful in all situations. So even though I said the wealth will come, or the riches will come in proportion, or you'll be paid in proportion to the amount of value you provide, it doesn't mean it'll be easy. And it doesn't
Right.
mean that you're going to go through rough times. And it doesn't mean that payment necessarily is like monetary. Payment can be in other ways as well. You can get paid with love. Like
That's
there are
right.
different types of payment, right? So over time, you will get paid with whatever the value that you provide. The value that Job was providing is his faithfulness to God. And then over time, he got repaid. And of course, there was terrible times. That's probably that story was a difficult one to read for myself. Whenever I've read it, it's difficult because I'm thinking like, would I still be faithful to God in this situation?
Hmm.
Jackson, I don't know if I could tell you the answer to that
Oh
because
man,
of
I don't either.
how much was help because of how much was happening to him. Like that is
Yeah.
crazy. Like how much was happening, and he still remained faithful. And guess what? God gave him back 10x, right?
Yep.
And then that was in proportion. That was out of proportion because this is the thing with God. God doesn't necessarily work in proportions. He works in what's the word now? Oh, it's not exponents in multiples. It's
Oh
in
yeah.
multiples. So go forth and multiply, right? So
True.
God is he works in multiples, right? So God gave him
Hmm.
multiples of what he even sowed. His what he was sowing was his faith. There we go. You will be paid in direct proportion, or you will be remunerated in direct proportion to what you sow, because what you sow is what you reap, right? And then with God, as I said, he will give you 10x. He'll give you 10x.
Jonathan,
He'll
you
give you
just
multiple.
you just exemplified one of the best leadership experiences that I've ever had.
Wow.
Right? You just did it because here I come in, student, just like any listener, right? And I'm challenging your math formula on the chalkboard, right? You're a teacher. You're talking about your vision, what's there. Here I come in challenging it, and you not only were able to address that challenge with grace and meet me on that, you're also able to draw it full circle to the fact that actually, what I said is accounted for on this, and let me help everybody else see exactly how that works. That's classic piece
I
for this.
appreciate
All
that.
you visionaries listening out there, learning to meet people where they're at and bridge the
Mm.
gaps. Like you just saw live with Jonathan. Let's dive into the worst. What is a complete
Ooh.
upside? What's the worst leadership experience that you've ever had? It doesn't have to be yours. It can be, but it can be. But we really
Mm.
what we're trying to get out of this for those audience members listening, like, why does Jackson always ask this? I want you to see the history of what has happened, so you don't have to repeat it. All right. So I
Mm.
know Jonathan's got, and every leader we have on here has dozens and dozens of experiences that would be worth not repeating and learning from. So, what's the one that comes to mind right now?
There's two that come to mind. One of them was a manager experience that I had with a manager, but then he was more of a manager than a leader. There's a difference.
Mm,
And with myself, one negative leadership experience that I had, and it was me. I was the leader in this situation. I think that would be even more beneficial to actually talk about, because I feel like a lot of people will be able to relate, and I feel like you will be able to relate as well, Jackson, as you have a team.
yes.
So I might have told you this, Jackson, but I had a creative director, and I I had to let him go. I had to
Mm,
let him go about a month or so ago. And Jackson, I made that decision about 6 months too late. That
mm,
was the bad decision, right? And it was bad not just for myself and for my company and for my team, but it was also bad for him, for my creative director, because he's not a bad person. He never was a bad person. That's why I hired him in the first place. But he just wasn't a good fit for the role. And I knew this from earlier, but I was making more of an emotional decision to keep him than the logical decision of letting him go, because the logical decision to let him go would be better for him, and it would be better for me and for my company as well, and for my team and for my clients, because he just wasn't the best fit. So meaning he would have done a lot better at a different company where he was a better fit in said company. And our business would do a lot better if he had not been there, or if he'd been in
yeah.
a different position. Right. And I gave him too many chances as well, because I was leading from an emotional perspective. Like, it's okay to have emotions, but it's not that like, as a business person, you're not supposed to let the emotions have the driver's seat. You're supposed to acknowledge them, acknowledge your emotions, because everyone has them. Even Jesus had emotions, and yeah, he has emotions, right? Like,
Yes.
but you don't let them get in the driver's seat. Like, you're
Mm,
supposed to be in the driver's seat. Logic is supposed to be in the driver's seat, directing you forwards, and emotions can stay there. So that's one mistake that I'd say that I made, but I
mhm.
don't want to make that mistake again, and God willing, I won't.
Well, maybe you won't. As you grow your
Mm.
team and expand, I bet there's opportunities to learn new perspectives on that.
Yeah.
I've had many. Like I got chills multiple times as you talked through that story because it's like I was remembering people, who've come along the way and situations where we've learned different things. And I'm fortunate now. The team has a level of strength to where it's more of a team decision than it is mine.
Right.
And when it comes to our Latinos who are coming in now for our digital ambassador program, I'm not even hardly involved in the decision.
Hmm.
Whether people come in or whether people are let go, that's now not I don't have a direct involvement, nor should I, because I'm not directly involved in that
I see.
circumstance. So there's levels to this, that get unlocked, but it is, it is so hard when you're a caring person. Sometimes
Yeah.
you allow that care to take control. Like you said, I love how you said that, the driver's seat. Emotions and logic are two elements that can influence, but you are the one that needs to maintain the balance and the control of that situation. That's cool. Diving into your best leadership, what's the best leadership experience that you've ever had?
Oh, the best leadership experience I've ever had. I'd say, hmm. I, I would say, just off the top of my mind, just the things that my editor say to me and my team says to me actually, in terms of how much they actually like working for me. And I guess I don't even like saying working for me, working with me. I don't know if that's a
Sure.
mindset thing, but I just like to say working with me because we're a team, right? Um, just how much they say they like to work with me and how much they like working at the company that I run. I'm pretty proud of that because I haven't heard many people say that before about the companies that they worked at. And I couldn't have said that. I haven't said that before about the places that I've worked at previous. Actually, no, there was one place. I used to work in an Indian takeaway. No, not takeaway, sorry, Indian restaurant, which was really nice. It was like a family there. I loved it there. But everywhere else I've worked, I couldn't
Mm.
say that I really loved working there. But then my employees have said that. So I'm happy about that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Those of you, again, visionaries out there, it's a temp check. As your team expressing on a regular basis how much they love working with you, or do they express that they love working for you? Perhaps we should pay more attention to how they articulate that.
Mm,
But there's an intentionality of words that can be utilized, and the more you practice it, the more we practice it, and the more we stick to circles that practice the type of communication that we foster and we cultivate, we want, the easier it is. It's hard in a world that is driven by hyperbole, and absolutism and control. So something that we always have the opportunity to work on. I appreciate you live kind of calling yourself out on that and for that, and seeing that it's still healthy to be aware of both versions of that
mm.
sentence, to meet people where they're at. So that's awesome. So yeah, think through that, visionaries. And we're going to turn the stakes up one more time. Jonathan, if this is the last chance you had to speak on stage,
Mm.
what powerful lesson can other visionaries learn from your experience?
They can learn that you turn into what you tune into. And I might have said this already to you, but I say it a lot because I believe in it a lot. And if this is one thing that I could leave with everybody, it would be it's literally this. You turn into what you tune into. So garbage in, garbage out. Like if you're taking in good stuff, you'll get good stuff. If you're taking in negative stuff, you get negative stuff. That's just the way that it works. What you sow, you reap. We spoke about it earlier. You turn into what you tune into. This means what if you're tuning into what the type of friends that you keep, the type of company that you keep. This means the music that you listen to as well. That's really, really key. Like music has a really big impact and we don't even realize it sometimes. Also, the podcast that you listen to, also the Netflix shows that you watch, the Instagram posts that you like and you look at, and even your explore page will tell on you sometimes. Like on the stuff on your Instagram, like the stuff that you don't even really want to admit that you like to look at, it will appear on your explore page because your explore page sometimes knows you better than you know yourself. So that's another thing to have that's like a little temperature check. Have a look at your explore page, but what are you tuning into? Because that is what you will become. You saw the books. I couldn't even remember any other books, Jackson. I just talked about like personal development and business books, and
That's right.
I just talk about personal development and business because I turn into what I tune into. The podcasts I listen to around the same kind of stuff. Because I turn into what I tune into. So if there's one thing that I could leave with people, it is that you turn into what you tune into.
Yes, I'm actually going to put myself live on the hook for this one, because I love this and believe in it so much. One, I went through a phase where I was
Mm.
tuning in constantly to podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
specifically Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, and Sam Ovens. I have nothing against all those leaders. I love them. I do not like the way Grant Cardone leads.
Okay.
And I don't really like the way Sam Evans leads. There's a too much
Mm-hmm.
control aspect, too much
Mm.
apathy involved in that scenario, in my opinion. And at the same time, they're all very, very good at strategy, driving business forward. So here I was listening to all that, and I start to cuss more often. As I'm
Mm.
listening to these four individuals, I start to develop more of an apathy, for those that I'm working with. And it was not a pleasant experience. It was one where I thought I wanted to go that route, but I pretty quickly, within a couple months, I realized like, no, I'm changing like who I am just by the content that I'm consuming. Not their
Yeah.
fault. It was my choice. I was choosing to
Mm.
dive into that. So I had a buddy, and he was struggling with some developments in his life. And he says, Jackson, every time I go to Facebook, Facebook's always showing, and I'm not going to say what he said because I don't want my content to be so like automatically, the algorithm's going to catch what I say. But it's like I was like, the challenge is it's going to show you what you consume, like you talked
Yeah.
about, right? So I went to my Facebook and I showed him. I was like, look, notice how I've got ads for
Yeah.
business and family stuff, business,
Mm-hmm.
stuff for, yep, business again, sponsored, talk less, sell more, podcast, my sister's store, right? So again, entrepreneur stuff, of course, YouTube channel growth. It's all business. Like as you keep going, the only thing
Yeah.
that will pop up every once in a while is Disney, because I also look at stuff with my kids and for my kids, just see families
Yeah.
and baby photos, right? That's all my Facebook knows I want to see. And so we do have the ability to control these algorithms. How? By controlling what we choose ourselves to intake.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for sharing the quote. I absolutely love it. You've never shared that power quote with me. So today I'm blessed. You turn
Okay.
into what you tune into. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
absolutely.
All right. So
And
we're going to
also,
use a couple
so
minutes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say something off the back of what you said also. So Gary V, I actually ended up being invited to his office and I met him about a month
Woo!
or so ago or something like that, which
Oh
was
my
really,
gosh.
yeah, it
What a
was really
dream.
cool. And I would actually say that probably one of the greatest leadership representations I've seen recently was going to his office and meeting his team, meeting him. So meeting him was great. Like that lasted about maybe 20 seconds because of how busy he is. Like, can you believe this guy has like 4-minute meetings? It's crazy. But
Yep.
when I was there, I spoke to his team members and they were literally representing exactly what he talks about. He talks about empathy, he talks about kindness,
Yes.
he talks about like, passion and such. And I'm speaking to all of his team members and they're literally just reverberating this exact vibe of empathy,
Yes.
kindness, happiness, like that kind of. And I loved it. Like I loved being at his office. And in their office, they had like this is the office in London. They had bleachers in the actual office. They had like this kind of karaoke room as well, which was crazy. And people were just able to be themselves, which is what I loved. So
Yeah.
that is one representation of leadership that I say that I really, really loved.
I roped him in, and thank you for bringing this back full circle, because I have a huge passion for, I don't talk about it much in this podcast because it's about others' visions, but I do talk about this a lot out there. And it's that Gary Vaynerchuk's audience, right? They use a vernacular, a vocabulary, a set of words, right? He's helping people get out of the hood all over the
Mm,
world. That's what he focuses on. He's an immigrant who grew up in the hood, who's trying to help people grind and hustle out of that. And I get that. And there's a certain level of vocabulary you want to be able to use to associate with and be accepted by. Same thing with Spanish. I can't influence my Spanish speakers if I don't speak Spanish. That does not
un
happen.
poquito de
You
español,
got
sí.
Exactamente. You got to meet people where they're at. And
Yeah.
so that's a very, very important reality. He does not usurp language in order to control or hurt people. I love how he can gracefully utilize those. I see Tony Robbins do the same thing. He'll use it for shock effect. He'll use it to relate to people. And that's the beauty
Hmm.
of like what language was intended for, was to be able to relate and understand each other. So I'm glad you brought that up. I do see him as a phenomenal leader. All right, we got a couple minutes left, Jonathan. We got to burn through some serious
Yes.
value real fast. So when we talk about refining the podcast vision for more downloads as a show strategist, like what do people need to be paying attention to? How do we take our podcast to the next level?
Well, first and foremost, I see a lot of people miss out on what I like to call social media. I think a lot of us know it. Understanding number one, where your clients are, or where the people, not even necessarily, because I speak about B2B podcasts all the time. So that's why I go to clients first, just for a bit of context. But where the people that you want to be listening to your podcast are, be there. Like where they spend their time, just be there. So, for example, I deal with a lot of B2B podcasts. So be on LinkedIn. For example, if you're trying to reach a wider audience of people, maybe younger generation, go on TikTok, and even the older generation as well are actually going on to TikTok as well. So you can
Yep.
have a look on there, upload on there too, and be consistent on these platforms. Just because you're only getting a couple hundred views for now doesn't mean that that's going to be the same going on into the in perpetuity. But with these platforms, one thing I want people to realize is that a couple of hundred views, like imagine being in the room with hundreds of people. Like people look at 200 views like it's not a lot. Try being in a room in front of 200 people and speaking. Like, that is is big. That's a lot of people looking at your stuff. So put it into perspective also when you're looking at
Yes.
views and when you're looking at plays and such, right? And as I said,
I
being
love that.
consistent. Sometimes I see on platforms people will post a picture of the fact that podcast is out. That's great, but you can't listen to a picture. So put out some sort of a video or some sort of at least an audio clip. I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend a video clip, but at least put out some sort of clip kind of teasing people into what the episode is going to be about, and have some sort of promotion around it as well. Also utilize email lists. So if you have an email list, utilize that. If you don't have an email list, make one. Right, start to get people onto this email list. You could do this through using lead magnets. A lead magnet is essentially some bit like a bit of value that you give to people in exchange for their email. Whether let's say, for example, you're a coach, maybe you're giving people 5 steps to achieve whatever outcome that you help people to achieve, like a PDF, for example, and then you just get their email in exchange for that. Build up this email list and send them updates, like a newsletter, for example, of the podcast when it releases, so you get a little bit of a bump as well. Um, and those are the things that I would say off the top of my head as well. Of course, paid ads is another thing that you can do, but I'm just thinking from an organic perspective currently. And then also the last thing is collaborating with people who already have an audience, right? No, collaborating with people who have something to say, as in have some sort of value to add, and who already have an audience. Because the people who have value to add, when you bring them onto the podcast, when you put it out there, they're going to hopefully say something which is going to spark some sort of attention and spark something for people to actually be interested in your content on social media. And also, if they already have an audience, that'll be able to bring their audience into your content and bring their audience onto your platform because you have brought them onto your platform. It's like the Pied Piper, because the audience will follow the Pied Piper wherever the Pied Piper goes. But those are just
Yes.
off the top of my head.
Dude, I love it. I appreciate you giving us all that off the top of your head. I look forward to having a further conversation. Maybe we do an episode, maybe we do a LinkedIn event, something else. But I'd love to dive into the systems with you. Just extrapolate
Yes.
on what you're building at, how you're building it, because those nuances, I know for a lot of the audience members who've been at this for years, it can be so daunting and overwhelming to say, like,
Mm,
man, I've tried, each one of those aspects. Well, the challenge for those of you who are more seasoned veterans in this regard is you've often been sold that one of those mechanisms, like Facebook ads, is the bridge between you and your clients, or landing page is the bridge between you and your clients, or the email list is the bridge between your. They're all pillars and cables.
mm,
They're all part of a bigger bridge. So you didn't lose out. You didn't miss it. You're not in a worse spot because you have an email newsletter infrastructure set up, but if you didn't tie all of your systems together as an entrepreneur, you don't have the infrastructure to
mm,
sustain people and get people truly across. And that's what I've seen Jonathan's systems like, whoa, he's showcasing to people like kind of the right way to pull things together. And you're obviously doing that for yourself too, which is evident by your own
mm.
social media streams. So we are out of time today. We went right up to the top of the hour. We're going to shut this down, but we're going to have in the action steps, the ways that you can work with Jonathan Reid. I highly recommend always going to the source of the well and the water itself, not just letting this podcast be the last time you engage with Jonathan, especially if you gained deep value out of this like I did. I'll certainly be knocking on your door a lot, Jonathan. Also below, we'll put the resources on there. And in the top right corner, we'll have an invitation for you to come and be our next guest. We're always looking for visionary leaders who want to showcase the value they're throwing out to the world. Now, you could just be starting out. We still want you to come in if you're a great leader. You could be at Jonathan's stage and the Gary Vaynerchuk stage. Gary, we'd love to have you on the show. We want people here who want to be on the show and who have a serious mission towards giving back. And we will see you guys all on the next episode. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time